Hey there, welcome to the Jewish Adulting Podcast. Thank you for joining me today on your adulting journey. Before we get started, can you do me a quick favor? Can you hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to this? I promise it's not a lifetime commitment, but when you don't subscribe, it's kind of like coffee without caffeine. What are we even doing here? Or like latkes without applesauce? Are we even living our best life? When you subscribe, you not only give me warm, fuzzy feelings, but you're also helping me bring amazing guests who rely on subscriber counts to know whether joining me is a worthy endeavor. More subscribers mean more epic conversations for you. And hey, if you're feeling extra generous, you can also show your support by becoming a monthly supporter at buymeacoffee.com/Jewish Adulting. Whether it's $1, $5, $10, or even $20, every little bit helps make this podcast rolling. Of course, if you're sitting on a cool million or even looking to sponsor the show, reach out to me at jewishadulting@gmail.com. Also, I'm always looking out for engaging, thoughtful, passionate guests to join me. So if you want to nominate someone or want to come on the podcast yourself, reach out. Let's make a podcast shidduch.
This is Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer of the Shmooze.com. Jewish adulting is about shining a light on parts of ourselves in order to do Avodas Hashem with all the tools and resources at our disposal. It is an honor and a privilege to have every day to further refine our character and grow closer to Hashem. Take advantage of these opportunities before it's too late.
Good evening, everybody. This is Chedva Rose, the host of the Jewish Adulting Podcast. I have with me tonight Rabbi Akiva Feldman, who is actually the Rav of my shul, Ohel Yakov. And I wanted Rabbi Feldman to be here this evening to talk about something that's really important. But before we get into that, if the Rav could please share with us a little bit about your background, about where you grew up, like what yeshiva system you went through, like a little bit about yourself, where you are now, that would be great.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, hosting me. Looking forward to discussing very important topics together. So my name is Akiva Feldman, as you mentioned, and I live currently and was born and bred in Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I was born. That's where a lot of my family was rooted here for many generations. My great-grandfather was a Rav here. My father did not grow up here, but was here from about 8th grade before his bar mitzvah. And I'm still living here in Baltimore. I went to school here at the famous Talmudical Academy, TA, till 8th grade. I went to Ner Yisroel for both high school, Beis Medrash, and many years of Kollel. I went to Eretz Yisrael for 2 of the years before I got married, 1 year in the Mir Yeshiva. In the second year, I was in the opening inaugural year of what is now known as Birchas Mordechai in Beitar, under Rabbi Yaakov Friedman, who's my Rebbe Yeshiva. I was not in Beitar. It's now in Beitar. Many people know of it as Beitar. But when I was there, it was in the middle of Yerushalayim. It was not called Birchas Mordechai yet. And I was proud to be from the founding members of what was then called Shari Meir under Yaakov Friedman in Yerushalayim. So that's my basic background. I then learned many years of the Kol Ner Yisroel. I lived in Yeshiva Lane with my family for many of those years. And along that way, I taught for different high schools here. There's a high school called Ni'imus Satira under Rabbi Shulman. I taught for 6 years for high school boys that were sort of didn't make it other places, and we try to help them properly. I've taught halacha in Beit Yakov, the girls' high school here, for many years as well. And my current position, which is how we know each other, in the congregation of Ohel Yakov on Glen Avenue in Baltimore. I've been here for about 4.5 years, and actually started right during the COVID pandemic when shul was not even open. Interesting way to begin. Well, began without beginning. Shul was still closed, and got to know everybody through Zoom, sort of like the way we're talking now. And since then, it's been a wonderful, growing relationship with everybody in our shul, and we now live right near our shul with my family, and I guess me basically from birth till today.
Yeah. So we actually know each other. We know each other from Fountain View, I think, right? I think
What was
we were
that?
in Fountain View when we were in Fountain View.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes. That was the pre-Yeshiva Lane, post-married days. Yes, exactly.
Right. So I didn't even remember that. I don't ever remember, like I have zero memories of that, but your wife actually came up to me when I first met her. She's like, "Oh yeah, we know each other from Fountain View." I was like, "Oh,
Right.
that just
Okay, that's
shows."
good. Yeah. See, I don't either remember a lot of the family there, but that's why I rely on my wife for a lot of things.
Right.
Besides that,
But you were probably out of the house a lot, and she probably had to like walk around Fountain View with the kids, and
right. The nice area, nice
yeah,
surrounded area where all the kids played
yeah,
outside. Yeah.
yeah. And also, while I have you on the phone, and I don't generally get an opportunity, not everyone gets an opportunity to interview their Rav. So I'm going to take that opportunity and ask you, like, at what point in your learning and teaching did you know that you wanted to be in Klei Kodesh, like, or to be a Rav? Like, at what point did you decide that's what you wanted to do?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I probably always naturally felt that pull always to Klei Kodesh, whether it's because I always viewed my Rebbeim as, role models and people I wanted to follow in their way. And again, that doesn't mean you can't view your Rebbe as a role model and not go into, but for some reason it always just clicked in my mind as something I would want to do, looked up to doing, again, either just looking at it or a Rebbe or a Rav as somebody that I would, model after or love to follow in their ways. It's even more, my two grandfathers are and were Rabbanim, one in Atlanta, Georgia, and one in Trumbull, Connecticut. So I always grew up, even though my father is not in Klei Kodesh, but I grew up, anybody that I sort of looked up to in the previous generation or even spent my own time with, or, you view as it's like, grandparents have that, almost senior honorable position. Both sides I looked were Rabbanim. So it didn't automatically make me know what I would want to do, but certainly was in my mind, both in my own learning and my own feeling what I wanted to do with the different abilities. And even growing up like that, it sort of was always my mindset. I never knew what would, be available. You never know where Hashem was going to guide you. You can't be guaranteed anything. And, even as I mentioned, I started teaching and I started studying to do with Rabbanis. I did other things along the way, not official Rabbanis, but, dealing with families and couples even before that. So, I guess it was always in my psyche. My learning developed into that. And I'll say for, most of my learning and growth, it was, somewhat of my goals or, wishes.
Okay. Very interesting. So actually one of the, you and I have gotten like closer over the years, these past few years, and my children like text you and call you on their own without me knowing about it, or sometimes even encouraging them. Like they ask me a question, I'm like, I don't know, ask Rabbi Feldman. So, our families relies on you heavily. But one of the things I really like about a lot of the advice that I've gotten from you is it's A, really non-judgmental, and two, really practical. Like it doesn't focus on like understanding each component, and you're not doing therapy here. You're doing on like, what can we do to move forward?
Right. In this situation, right.
Yeah. So that sort of, that has been like a quality that I have really, appreciated. And so when you and I bounced around ideas of what to talk about, we actually had a few ideas that were either accepted, rejected, accepted, and then whatever. We had a road, we had a journey here, but we ended up coming to talk about Shabbos. And I knew I wanted to do Shabbos, and I knew that I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't want to talk about it from the perspective of like, they're a beginner. I wanted to talk about it from the perspective of someone who keeps Shabbos and like kind of go back to basics, because that's what I feel like I'm doing now. I haven't been in school in over 20 years. And
haven't even thought about it.
Right. Like I don't really think about it so much. I mean, I'm being mechanech my children about Shabbos, and we do all the things, and my children, Baruch Hashem, we have good memories and all the good things. But like I haven't really thought about it in a long time. And I think that there are new challenges for this generation and this stage in my life. And I felt like let's refresh this. Like you have a Tahar Mishpacha refresher course. Yeah, you go back for halacha classes. You try, like, you always got to refresh yourself. So that's what I wanted to do with you, and I think you were on board. And so together we got excited. So I guess let's start off from the beginning, but not obviously the very beginning. We all know that Shabbos is, I'm not going to go into all what Shabbos is, but there are a lot of different components to Shabbos, but essentially what we're trying to do is like get closer to Hashem on that day. But that's such a simplistic way of looking at Shabbos. Like, how would you define the purpose of Shabbos?
So I would define it, well, first of all, just to introduce the idea of defining it, and what you said is a very, very important approach. Just thinking about refreshing our approach, especially those of us that have been used to, or almost maybe take for granted keeping Shabbos, the idea and the thought of just refreshing it on its own is already maybe half the battle, maybe a quarter of the battle. And that refreshing can take on any direction. It could even be as practical as just refreshing in some halachas. It could be that, let me just, at the Shabbos table or sometimes throughout Shabbos, open up a simple halacha book, sefer, English, Hebrew, deeper, simpler, even hashkasa. The fact that I'm going to do something to remind myself, focus on the fact that the Shabbos, even if it was just simple halacha, we many times split in our minds, the split between the technical areas and all of Yiddishkeit, all of Judaism. There's technical halacha. What am I allowed to do, not allowed to do, have to do, don't have to? What do I say? What do I not say? It's very, very important. And it's like we split that between the emotional, uplifting, hashkafic, uplifting spiritual parts of serving Hashem. And it's true, halacha and Hashem's will for us to do is very technical, and it's very uplifting and very holy, very spiritual. We should always allow them to mix and allow them to both be true. And even if our refreshing was just in the most technical, simple way, let's say you opened up a small English sefer about halachas that are very simple to us. It's not anything we didn't know. It's not even a deeper, it's not another opinion we never learned about. But just the fact that I'm technically reminding myself, even the things that I know, and I'm either saying it out loud at the table or even to myself, that's a refresher. And that you can focus on the most simple technical halacha and realize, focus how special Shabbos is, because look how my actions matter. Look what I'm refraining from. Why am I refraining from it? What does Hashem expect from me? And you suddenly are tapped into Shabbos. So I would say just thinking about refreshing yourself in any way is so important. And again, even the most technical could be very uplifting. Could be reading a very deep sefer, book, essay, shir, drasha about the greatness of Shabbos, or feeling connected to Shabbos, or again, even a technical, simple way. Just refreshing in any way really opens up our minds. And the halacha and hashkafa should always be both connecting to Hashem. And any refresher, just thinking of that is super, super important. I just saw two people's houses. Happened to be in there, and I just noticed maybe it's a new Judaic item. I don't know, maybe it's one of these new, they always have to come up with new gift ideas to keep sales going. But I happened to notice two places that on the table, on the server, somewhere displayed is a little holder, and it has the parsha of the week in that holder. And I guess it comes with, the whole set of each week's parsha. It's a little silver holder, and you slide in, sort of like in shul when you have those little things in the front reminding you to say Yalaviyovo or something. It's a little slider, and it has the parsha there. And at first saw it, it struck me as a little interesting, like it's almost like a Judaic piece. You'll have the silver candlestick, the leichter, and maybe you'll have a nice, a nice tefillah for Yeshivas Ner there. It just had the parsha. At first it struck me as interesting because it's not in shul. Hey, maybe in shul we're going to be reading and laying the parsha. Maybe there we'll display what the parsha is and remind ourselves, to review the parsha. But here it was in the home. Excuse me, it was in the home. I apologize. It was in the home. Just like where the usual Judaica nice things are displayed. And I'm assuming the intent of it is to focus ourselves the whole week on what parsha is it this week. The week is defined by the parsha. Shabbos is defined by the parsha. Even things that happen in the world, even things in our own lives, we can always find it in the parsha. And even if that's not the place where the person is going to be learning his chumash, wasn't like at the seat, at the base medrash, or even where the person learns. It's just an interesting, eye-opening way of focusing a little bit on Shabbos. Because, the main parsha of the week is blamed on Shabbos. Yeah, you also read it during the week, it's true. But it's an interesting way, like I was trying to say, refreshing and refocusing ourselves. Just have something nice and fancy that in the corner of your eye. Parshas Mitzvatim, Parshas Truma, Parshas Vayikra, remind you what the week's about, what we're leading to, and what we're going to learn about on Shabbos. This is an interesting way. Again, just this idea of doing anything to refresh ourselves and remind ourselves. That's the first thing, just for that refreshing in general.
That actually reminds me of, you just reminded me of, like when we were in school, they used to write on the board, Hayom Yom, Sheni, whatever.
Right.
And I would always be like, why do we need, like, we know it's Tuesday. We know it's
we know what day it is. It's okay. I'm not going to forget. Right.
Right. And you're just reminding me, like, it was like, until Shabbos. Like, it's all
exactly.
Until Shabbos.
You're focused to Shabbos.
Right.
Exactly right. Yeah, when I teach, that the principal reminds us in the teacher's memos once in a while, every board must have the Hebrew date on it with the Parsha. Right. Even though when I come in, it's usually there already, but sometimes I accidentally erased it as I'm erasing the board. I try to fill it in because, that's part of thinking that. In fact, by the way, one of the ways the Ramban understands this to be almost a mitzvah d'oraisa, a Torah-based mitzvah, is that when we say each day and we count for a Shabbos like that, whether you write on the board or you say it yourself, we even say it in davening, right? For those who daven all the way to the end and say the Shir Shal Yom, and we introduce it with Hayom Yom Sheni b'Shabbos Shabo Haladim Hayom V'Samikdash. We introduce the Shir Shal Yom, the special chapter of Tehillim that was said in the Beit HaMikdash for that day. We introduced it by what today is. So it seems like just an introduction of we're about to say the special Shira, the special praise that was said for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But really, if you just say that opening line, it's not just introduction. You're actually doing the mitzvah of counting towards Shabbos and making Shabbos special throughout the week. And if you was focused on it, it takes about, maybe 3 seconds. But if you would focus on that and say, not only am I just introducing the following paragraph, but I'm actually counting towards Shabbos. I heard many years ago, a visiting Rav out at a town somewhere, and he said, according to this Ramban, there's a greater, more important mitzvah in that opening line than the Shira itself. The paragraph film, of course, is super important, and we're reminding ourselves what was said in the Beit HaMikdash. So that, more reminding ourselves that one day in the Beit HaMikdash, hopefully we'll be able to have that. But that's remembering what used to be. The opening line could be a mitzvah d'oraisa of focusing, refreshing ourselves, anticipating Shabbos with Hayom Yom Sheni b'Shabbos, Yom Shlishi b'Shabbos. And I would say somebody wants to do that. There might be a way. Let's say even somebody maybe doesn't daven the whole thing. Many women daven certain amounts, not everything. They surely don't have to. Women don't usually daven until the end, and those parts of davening all the way at the end, the Shir Shal Yom. But if somebody wanted to give themselves a little boost of anticipation of Shabbos, just anytime throughout the day, maybe done davening or anytime, just say for 3 seconds, Hayom Yom Shlishi b'Shabbos, and you're focusing your entire week and every day on where am I leading up to Shabbos. And it could be a real mitzvah in literally a few seconds, but looking forward to it, every day. So that's certainly exactly, as you said, putting it on the board or saying it is a very important focus on the week revolved around Shabbos.
Right. So we still haven't gotten to, but like why? Like
why exactly? Why Shabbos is out, right?
Why Shabbos? Like what is the purpose of? And even like as we're still in our introduction of this podcast, and there's just so much to talk about, and I'm hopefully we're not going to get to everything. I know that, but like even in this introduction, I'm like, oh yeah, wait, when we get the Beis HaMikdash back, are we going to be not keeping Shabbos? So we are keeping Shabbos. Like, okay, now I have more questions that I didn't prepare for.
Right.
So, but let's get into why Shabbos. Like, what is actually...
Okay, definitely why Shabbos, yeah. And if you could put on the schedule, once the Shiach comes very soon, like next week, we'll have a podcast about Shabbos with the Beis HaMikdash. That'll be very soon, second edition. And then, but let's know why Shabbos. I say Shabbos touches us, affects us, and defines us in every level of our being, in every level of Shabbos. And I'm going to explain what I mean. It means as follows. If we take a step back and just look at how many different layers of our existence Shabbos affects, then we could appreciate how it really talks to us in a very practical way. There are 3 times in history, 3 times in the Torah, 3 times that Shabbos sort of came up, happened, and makes a world-changing difference, and we're always tapping into those three throughout Shabbos. Shabbos came up right when the world was created. We know that. Shabbos means, if we have any most simple definition of Shabbos, Hashem created the world in 6 days. On the seventh day, he, quote unquote, rested. Of course, he didn't need a rest. He wasn't tired, but he completed, focused on what he had, stopped the creation, whatever the words rest in a general sense mean. That's what Shabbos is. Shabbos of Maisa Bereshis, Shabbos of the creation. 6 days, and immediately when the world was created, it was Shabbos, because that's what Hashem rested. By Yechulu, we say that Friday night, we say that in davening. That's Shabbos of Bereshis. But it didn't stop there. And I'll hopefully come back in a minute to show how it'll make a difference. That was true, that was always in the world. However, that's not the only aspect of Shabbos. Shabbos then continued and became a mitzvah given to Klal Yisrael. It could have remained that. It would have been enough to say, even without a mitzvah, this is the way the world was created. This is how Hashem rested. But then, Hashem at Har Sinai, in the Aseret HaDibros, as one of the mitzvahs, Hashem gives us Shabbos. And it's not only the reality of the world, the reality of creation, it's a mitzvah, a special connecting present. It's called the bris. The bris is the connecting covenant between people and Hashem. It's an oath, it's a sign, because Hashem gave it to us. This is, I want you to follow it. It's not just enough that it's the reality and the truth, but it's also something I give to you that you should follow, connect to me by me commanding you. At Matan Torah, I gave you the mitzvah of Shabbos besides the way the world was created. So besides Shabbos, the Bereshis, there's Shabbos of Matan Torah. And then we know that a third reality where Shabbos defines is L'olam Haba. Shabbos is Me'ein Olam Haba. We say it in our Demiros. We say it in benching in different parts. And we say it really in davening, as I'll mention in a minute. Olam Haba, the world, when we're above, free of the physical restraints, whether referring to a person after he leaves this world out of his body, or even the whole world will eventually become totally spiritual and not physical. I'm not going to get into all those details, but Olam Haba, the next world, again, for us and for the whole world, is absolute spiritual connection to Hashem without any of the limitations of the physical world. It's the reward, it's what we've earned, it's what the world came to, a much higher, purer spiritual level. And Shabbos is a taste of that. Shabbos is a Me'ein Olam Haba. Me'ein needs a little taste of it. 1/60th. The Gemara has lists of all things that are 1/60th of something greater. Shabbos is 1/60th of Olam Haba. That means we live in a way that's a little elevated plane, a little not restricted by physical limitations, and a little bit sensing, tasting, touching, connecting to Hashem in a way that's absolutely spiritual with a little bit less physical. A taste of Olam Haba. So not only, so all three, Shabbos Bereshis, the way the world was created, Shabbos of Matan Torah, a special mitzvah we got from Hashem, and Shabbos Me'ein Olam Haba, which will be in the future, which is a taste of the future, which will be even more when that comes. And the I think, a very nice way of viewing Shabbos, I think that talks to us and affects us in a very practical, personal way. Because we're all very, very physical. Every mitzvah we do is physical. You can only shake a lulav with the physical branch of a lulav and only hear the shofar with the horn of an animal. And you can only make kiddush and Shabbos with, the words of our mouths and a cup of wine. Everything is physical. Hashem made it physical. That's how we purify ourselves. That's how we serve Hashem. And we work for 6 days, whether it's working in the sense of earning our livelihood in a parnasa, whether it's making our food, you got to cook food to eat it, or you have to chop it or dice it or harvest it or cook it. And you have to clean our clothing, all the work. Work in the general sense, work in the survival sense. We're physical people. We live physically, we are physical, and we involve ourselves for 6 days with all that physical survival. And then Shabbos comes and attaches to that, and talks to that, and defines it, and says, wait, where is your physical life coming from? Where is it leading to? Who gave you the ability to exist? Who gave you the ability, not only 6 days in the original creation, every 6 days there's more creation. Hashem gave us the ability to create just like he did. We can cook, we can clean, we can write, we can drive a car, we can use the fire of a car to get places, we can use electricity to talk to people, and to, all the things we use technology today for. We're accomplishing, we're connecting, we're improving things, we're improving items and food and clothing and shelter. We can build things. All the malachos are the ways that we build the world, survive, persevere, and succeed in this world. Now we have to stop and say, where did that come from? Why am I doing it? Why do I exist? Why do I have the ability to create? Where do I get the ability to create from? And what's the purpose of it all? That's what Shabbos does in the most physical sense. It talks to our 6 days of creation. And then not only that, then we go further and we talk about what mitzvahs do I have? Shabbos is given at Har Sinai, Matan Torah. It's not only a way to remind ourselves in our physical sense. We're uplifted from that. It's not only a, defining or talking to our physical survival. It's talking to our spiritual connection to Hashem. Hashem gave me this present. He gave me the ability not just to recognize how the physical world was created, but to even serve him and come close to him through a mitzvah of Matan Torah. And Hashem came to us in Har Sinai and expressed himself to us in a way that never happened in history before or after to any other people. Hashem said, this is part of my definition of I want you to know, to connect to me, and to understand me in a way that this mitzvah I'm giving you to keep my Shabbos. You're the ones who can recognize me as the creator, serve me, become close to me more than anybody else. And by the way, I would add at this point, this Matan Torah point is where Shabbos became a unique gift to Klal Yisrael more than the rest of the world. Because Shabbos is only a present for the Klal Yisrael. The rest of the world doesn't have that mitzvah. In fact, it always fascinates me that one of the main mitzvahs that any of the other nations are not even allowed to keep. It says anybody from another nation that keeps Shabbos in the way that we're supposed to, not only do they not have to, not only doing something unnecessary, it's a very serious transgression, very serious punishment. It always struck me as why of all of the mitzvahs is this the one of the few that's pointed out as the one that nobody else should keep? If anything, everybody should keep Shabbos. Everybody lives in this world. This world was created in 6 days, and Hashem rested on the 7th day for everybody. So if anything, if there's one mitzvah that should be in the Zion mitzvahs, the 7 mitzvahs that everybody has to keep, Shabbos, it's the truth, it's the reality of the physical creation, and everyone on this earth is living in that creation. Why it's so unique to us? Why are we so possessive, so to speak, of this mitzvah? It really should be pertinent to everybody. The answer is because Shabbos, it was around, it was available, but Hashem gave it just to us, and it became a present. Hashem said, you're the ones who can connect to me. You're the ones who I'm going to reveal myself as being the creator, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to raise your spiritual level. Even though everybody should have been available, I'm now making it. It's called a present. It's called a treasure. It's called something hidden. Even though it's not so hidden, the world's created, but it's hidden the fact that we can connect as a mitzvah on a higher realm that Hashem is the creator. And that's why it's so special. I think that second set of Shabbos not only being from the creation, but of Matan Torah elevates it to a level of mitzvah, to a level of connection, not only to recognizing our physical existence. So we want to make Shabbos practical. To myself first, let it talk to my physical life in the bottom. We run and we wear ourselves down and we survive and we eat and we drive and we build things and we accomplish things. We talk to people. We do everything during the week. If we don't stop and say what, why, from where, let it talk to me. Even in my physical existence, even if I don't feel such spirituality as Shabbos, even if it's, I don't know, I got used to it over the last 50 years. And I don't appreciate it anymore. And I'm just so worn out getting there. And I just can't breathe anymore because, first of all, I can't accomplish the things I want to. I can't call people. I can't finish my tasks. And I have to work so hard to get here. You know what? Let me stop and think. Why am I working hard? Why am I accomplishing? Why am I involved in 6 days? That talks to me at my physical level.
Right.
My physical level. And
right. So yeah. You have just covered a tremendous amount of information. And I've only asked one question, but which just goes to show you how rich this topic is.
Yeah.
It occurs to me, I have a question, I have a comment, and that leads to another question. One of the thoughts that I had is I really thought you were going in a different direction when you were saying that, we're physical bodies. And so we're talking to that physical part of our bodies, like the behemoths, like the animal body, like right. This is, we need to rest. We need to eat good food. Like that's really, what I really was thinking you were going to go that was, that in a way, like Olam Haba is such a abstract concept, right? Like we know,
right.
We know that really to be in this world is in many ways preferential because we could do Avodas Hashem in a way that we can't do, when we're not in our physical bodies. But we are very physical. Right. We are very physical, and we we can't really connect to this idea of Olam Haba except on Shabbos. And so it's almost like an incentive plan, right? Where you like, Hashem is like, if you like Shabbos, if you utilize Shabbos the way that Shabbos is supposed to be utilized, and you feel that sense of closeness, and you feel that sense of connection, and you feel that sense of, if you do it and you do it right, then there's a kal v'chomer here of like how much more so the greatness of getting Olam Haba as a reward. And we're not supposed to do things for the reward. But let me just show you
but it's definitely built in.
Looks like.
Right. Exactly, right. And I would say even more than an incentive, it's a step-by-step process to get there. Because we have to go through the process. You want to get there, you can't just jump to the Olam Haba level. But besides the incentive, it's actually the step-by-step process how to climb there. And by the way, even, so I didn't mention it, even what really answers your question, is that the process of each Shabbos, the 24 hours of Shabbos, actually builds us. Friday night, the davening in the Shemona Esrei, each has a very unique davening. It's the only time we have separate types of Shemona Esreis in the main center of Shemona Esrei. Friday discusses more, Hashem being the creator in the original six days. The Shabbos morning davening Shemona Esrei refers to the special present of the Torah of Shabbos. And then the afternoon at Mincha actually discusses the Olam Haba aspect of what it's going to be like. So you're right. Not only is it an incentive, but it's the process. And we literally go through, start out Friday night, get to the Torah part Shabbos day, and finally on Mincha, you'll reach, that process. You're absolutely right. It's an incentive, and it's actually the way to get there. We can only start with our physical self, and by tapping into that and then uplifting that, and then getting to the Torah aspect, we'll eventually reach that Olam Haba aspect where we're literally, almost above the world and on that higher spiritual realm.
Right. And I also can't help but think, while we're talking about it, that there's like Lafun Sa'agra, like the harder it is to get, like when you have that week where like just one thing after another comes, and then you tap into Shabbos and you do the work required to have a meaningful Shabbos, then your like manucha, like your peace of mind and your connection and all of that is like exponentially better because you've put in all this work, right? It's like those who, if you don't prepare for Shabbos, then you're not going to eat on Shabbos, like that whole concept.
Exactly right.
Right. So, but
right.
On a spiritual way, it's like if you don't have to work for the spirituality of Shabbos, if you don't have to work for Olam Haba, if it just came to you like naturally
right.
and easily, then you wouldn't have that same like, now I can relax. Now
exactly the same ownership of it, the same working towards it. Right, exactly right.
Right.
It's true in general, our whole life, the Ramchal explains at length, the whole world of Avodas Hashem in general, it has to be earned, and we have to struggle and work for it. Otherwise, it's called nama de kisufa, embarrassing bread. Like you said, if someone hands it to you, it doesn't feel good as if you worked for it. So certainly that's true for anything we earn. Hashem wants to give us Olam Haba always. Hashem could have given it to us straight. He doesn't need to watch us struggle. Doesn't make him feel good. It's the only way to earn what Hashem wants to give us. That's true for all serving Hashem, all earning a reward. But certainly, as you're bringing out in the process of Shabbos, you have to appreciate, own, and acquire that Olam Haba by working through sort of the physical preparations through the week to actually get there. And then you've earned it and you've acquired what is supposed to be given to you by Olam Haba.
Right. It seems to me that it's a little bit of a misconception that Shabbos is supposed to be easy. Like it should just come like I should just automatically connect spiritually and
right.
and to this mitzvah. And I actually,
right.
I've heard recently, unfortunately, it's kind of sad, but also I understand where they're coming from. There is a lot of Frum Jews who are struggling with Shabbos.
Right.
One of the issues is they're so addicted to their phones. They're so addicted
right.
to like being, entertained 24/7.
Right.
That they literally can't.
Their mind's not being settled, focused, and just being.
Right. Right. And so you would think like
nothing of value comes easy. Right.
Right. And but you would think that just being relaxed, just. I remember like yoga. I remember for a time I tried yoga and I I had a very hard time when they would try to like do meditation. I would literally be crawling out of my skin. Like, I can't do meditation.
Right, because you never.
I can't do this.
Right.
I can't do this. And it turned me off. I had to keep trying. I don't think I ever really got it because there is something that I don't want to be with myself. But that's just another conversation, honestly, with a therapist. But,
Right.
But my point is that we have to realize, and I think what I'm getting is that there is so much to gain, but there is work. And if you have that expectation that Shabbos is going to be easy, you might become resentful towards Shabbos.
Right. 100%. First of all, nothing of value comes easy. And if it does, then put more work into it to make it valuable. Right. Nothing will come easy. And especially in our generation, what you said, the challenge of Shabbos, and I would add, by the way, the other topic we almost discussed was tefillah. The special challenge today, especially for younger people, is not just, the need and the addiction to technology and something always flashing in front of you or being busy with something, but one of the casualties of the way we communicate and the social media or the just constant technology in a palm of our hand decides whether it's good or bad or destructive, just even just in the regular emotional, spiritual state we are in, is that we are never with or aware of our own selves, just being ourselves. Besides whether it's distracting and besides whether it's destructive, even if everything was good and kosher and, even using the most positive interacting way with people, just the casualty we have to be aware of. We're never just ourselves. There's always something to put our minds to, even if it's a good thing, but we're never just ourselves. And Shabbos is tapping back into yourself, your own physical self, your own spiritual self, your connection to Hashem. And we're very uncomfortable, sometimes tortured, or certainly just unaware of being ourselves. And that's why it's very challenging, besides, like you said, the being used to the phones, but we're just not used to being ourselves and appreciating ourselves. And that's very challenging for Shabbos. I would just add in, as a side, as you mentioned, tefillah. Many youth have struggled with tefillah, and I know it's a tangent, but, I've been in some training courses, and we were great mechanchim collaborated how to teach youth tefillah. And one thing is that besides, focus and knowing the word and appreciating the relationship with Hashem, is that we don't even appreciate ourselves. We don't know who we're bringing to the table, or to the sitter, because we're always just communicating, but it's not ourselves. We're not there. Talk to Hashem. You have to be there yourself. One of my rabbis said a fascinating thought, and it struck me. I'll never forget it. He said, in order to teach a child tefillah, first teach him how to take a walk by himself in the quiet and just be himself. And I felt like, what does that do with tefillah? I mean, that's nice to maybe be calm and focused, but tefillah is about the words and the sitter and thinking about Hashem. But he's saying you can't bring yourself to talk to Hashem if you're not knowing who yourself is. That if you can learn to just sit and be yourself, then you can suddenly express yourself to talk to Hashem. So, famous Shabbos. Like you said, we're so used to not only the distraction, but the mode of being interconnected and not just at peace with ourselves. That'll be a great preparation for Shabbos,
Right. Now,
to know who we are and then tap into that.
Right. And if we're non-Jews are not supposed to keep Shabbos. So it kind of seems like a very obvious question that I'm asking right now, but I don't know, maybe it's not. But it seems to me like if Shabbos is not meant for the other nations of the world, then what's the harm in letting them try to keep it? Like they're not going to gain that same, like they don't can't access that spiritual.
Right, it's true. If you say it would just be sort of someone banging on a door that doesn't open and it just wouldn't go anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
That's a good question. But to really go through the full motion of a Shabbos, it's almost like a little bit of like fest, or almost, taking the things that are really ours and, using for themselves. And again, I don't know in the deeper spiritual realm this it would be. The problem would be because maybe they are activating something in a wrong way, or it's just a totally meaningless action, but they're just doing something that's wrong and not, not proper. And, it's considered a unique presence of ours, and for them to tap into that, again, whether it's the external emotions or even some spiritual power, it's just, the opposite of what's supposed to be. The fascinating Gemara says that Hashem made in the constellations, in the mazel of the day of Shabbos, he made it look like a very destructive, negative day. So any of the nations that chose their day of rest were pushed away, and we see that in the world. Look in the world, 90% of religions, Islam, Christianity, they all have a day of rest. One is Friday, one is Sunday. And you think about it, why is that? If they're trying to either copy us or pull people away from us, or just even follow the way when they broke off from us originally, let them keep Saturday like we do. I mean, you're trying to mimic and follow this. Just keep the same day. It's fascinating. And 90%, maybe 95 or 98% of the world keeps Friday and Sunday, and nobody has, Hashem set it up. The Gemara says that the mazel and the different planets that, have powers in each day, it looks like a very negative, destructive day. So they chose other days. So Hashem, even in the sort of the spiritual nature, pushed everybody away from tapping into our Shabbos. It's a unique, special recognition and connection that we have.
Right. So I think that, we were talking before about counting down to Shabbos, right? And that actually being a mitzvah to do that. And some people do, count down to Shabbos, but for some people, it's almost like it interrupts the flow of what they were doing. Like, I got to stop what I'm doing. I got to get ready for Shabbos. And that in and of itself can be chaotic, can be onerous, can be a problem. How do we shift our mindset from, if we are in that group of people who are not counting down, but sort of like a little bit pulled out by it,
struggling to deal with it, right? The first thing is, I would say we have to allow ourselves to be in that mindset. We don't have to fight it necessarily. Just like we said, we're spiritual and we're physical. We can allow ourselves to be physically exhausted or physically, distracted or interrupted so think that we're busy with or accomplishing in our lives or in our business and our family. We can allow that. We can self-recognize and be self-aware that in my physical self, I am a worker, I'm a builder, I'm an accomplisher, or I'm even just busy with certain things, even just entertainment. And this is a distraction, and this is an interruption for me. And I feel the interruption. I can allow myself to be physical and to feel all the reactions of my physical involvement. Allow it. But then on top of that, realize that's not all that I am. It could be part of who I am. I don't have to fight that and uproot that. But allow myself to see I'm more than that. Sure, in my pursuits, my physical pursuits, I feel a little bit interrupted and even, almost stunted a little bit. But you know what? I was also more than that. I don't want to be just that. I could be busy with that. I could be accomplishing and involved in certain physical pursuits. But that's not only me. There's a greater purpose, whether I recognize that purpose after 120 years or whether I recognize that purpose in 5 minutes. But there's something greater. Why am I so busy? Why do I enjoy my involvement in the world? And why do I even feel overwhelmed by surviving or working hard or earning a parnasa or even just, keeping life going with the, the food and the clothing and the general survival we need? Why am I doing that? Sure, I feel busy. Sure, I feel overwhelmed. And sure, I feel interrupted by that. But what's the purpose of it all? That's where you tap into the next level. My neshama is elevated. There's a neshama yisera, an extra neshama comes in Shabbos. And I can allow myself to feel all those physical, call them negative feelings, or maybe neutral feelings. And while I'm allowing them, realize there's still something greater. So I would say the change of the mindset is not an uprooting it, but it's an adding another layer.
Right. And, this is something, and I just want to say that, there's a couple things. One thing I want to point out here is that I'm thinking to myself, I appreciate that permission because I think a lot of times we're very hard on ourselves. We really give ourselves a lot of I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't feel like that. I had a guest come on who was talking about empathy. And I said, well, what if I don't agree with the person who you want me to be empathetic towards? What if I don't agree with them? She said something that I think really applies in this situation, which is, if someone tells you they're cold, are you going to argue that they're not cold? Are you going to say, no, it's 70 degrees. No, you're wearing a sweater. No, I'm not cold. That's not empathy. That's
unless your kids, unless you're my boys putting them to sleep when they're arguing about it, cold or not.
Right. But how can you really you can say you feel cold, you feel hot, but you can't say that someone else doesn't feel that way. So I feel like
Exactly right.
You're giving me permission to say like,
Exactly.
okay, I don't connect with this mitzvah as much, and it is very stressful to get ready for Shabbos, and sometimes I resent it. It's
exhausting and stressful, and I'm not even and resentful, and not tapping into it. I have other things I need to be doing. That's all wonderfully okay, because that's our physical state. Then we could think a little more.
I think it's also it's very important, by the way, that you recognize that you are feeling those feelings. Like that is enough itself. Like I don't know why I don't like Shabbos. I just don't like Shabbos, right? Like if you're there, you're already that's a problem. Like you don't even know why you don't like it.
Right. So, it's better to understand why and accept it, understand it, and then you could add more layers, but keep that layer. Exactly.
Right. And that's actually where that's where the adulting piece comes in, because you're like,
exactly.
You can't just say like, I don't like it, I don't know why, and I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to sit here and
I'm going to ignore my feelings and ignore Shabbos, right? Adulting means to recognize it, put it in perspective, and then work on it, and then you can work further.
Right. I mean, that's that. I was talking to my brother the other day. We were talking about, why do we say we were talking about borer, because I was telling him I was so proud of my son for asking a borer question and fighting with me about it, and me being wrong after I asked him what I love about it. And I was feeling that my kid was halachically worried about borer or whatever. And we were talking about how, if you where was I going with this? Wow. I can't believe I just lost my train of thought. This is a first for the podcast.
Right. You're talking about recognizing, accepting where you are, and then.
Right. So recognizing and accepting that's even like a problem is that if you are not going to take responsibility for it, you really don't have a leg to stand on. And in this day and age, there is so much resources out there, and there's so many good people who are willing to answer your questions. And it's really, you can't just say, I don't like it, I don't want it.
Exactly right. Recognize why, be okay with that, but then you can work further.
Right.
So if I could add one point about that, you see, the way Hashem gave us the mitzvah, one of the main mitzvahs of Shabbos is saying Kiddush over a cup of wine, add a suda, connected to a suda. The suda itself is so multi-layered in the way that we experience it, and again, it follows the pattern I mentioned before about Bereshis, Torah, and Olam Haba. But just think about the idea of the suda. Sure, the tefillos of Shabbos mention these things, but one of the main myths is to physically experience Shabbos from both the most physical way, the most animalistic way almost, good food, filling food, probably a little funny Shabbos, a little less healthy, a little heavier, right? Because we're sharing Shabbos in a physical way. It talks to our physical selves, even if we say, I'm so exhausted, overwhelmed, I don't feel it. But you know what? A good hot potato in the cholent, or a nice piece of kugel, whatever you enjoy, that's Shabbos. I'm talking and feeding my physical self with something a little bit better. And because Shabbos is better, even the most physical way. Hashem created the physical world, and he wants me to feel physically better. It talks to my physicality. In fact, I mentioned before the idea of a neshama yesteira, an extra neshama on Shabbos. The different understanding of what that means. Rashi surprisingly says neshama yesteira means we have a bigger appetite. It's a very physical expression of Shabbos. We eat more, we have a bigger appetite, and we appreciate Shabbos in a very physical sense more. There's also mitzvahs to learn Torah on Shabbos. As they mentioned, there's special tefillos on Shabbos. There's more tefillos on Shabbos. There's all things we can do. And we can learn the halachas of Shabbos. We can sing the zemiros of Shabbos. We're all tapping to all parts of ourselves. And, even the way, again, picture the students of Shabbos, the Friday night student starts off, let's say that in the most physical way. We have as many foods hot and prepared as we could. That's like sort of the physical creation of the world part of Shabbos, and talking to our physical self. And it's still enjoying it. Shabbos day, you're a little more limited because you can't heat up that many things. You keep cholent on the fire over beforehand. Maybe a little more limited. You're sort of uplifting yourself a little more. Cholent is a special food. You're supposed to have something extra by day, but you also can't have as many things. So maybe you take that one extra food and uplift it. And then, as we know, for most of us, Shalosh Shudas time, Seudah Shlishis in the afternoon, sometimes, especially in the winter, we don't have an appetite at all. And sometimes you're literally eating just for the mitzvah, and you're almost like Olam Haba, where there's nothing physical. So even the way we tap into our bodies and our appetites, we can accept ourselves. Yes, we're physical people. Yes, we eat food. Yes, we're exhausted and we're distracted. You know what? I'm going to take the food and make it special. And I'm going to make it a little more of an mitzvah. And I'm going to make the food a little bit almost like a little haba, where it's even up to physical. So Hashem gives us these ways to accept ourselves, but then look at the layers. Look at the layers that are, even deeper.
Right. Okay. So I want to respect your time. So I just have a few more questions, and then I'll let you get back to your family and whatever else you do.
Six days of creation.
Right. So one of the questions I have, this is something that I personally, in all honesty, struggle with, which is, rush to Shabbos, and then Friday night is just like a crash and a burn.
Right.
And I have to work really hard. And so I was hoping that you might have some recommendations or advice on ways that I don't come into Shabbos too exhausted to even appreciate and tap into all the holiness that's available if I so choose to tap into that.
Right. So, well, if you're asking for physical advice, meaning how do I not be that exhausted, I don't have much to offer. I struggle with the same thing. Obviously, if you can time yourself, or you can find a way to rest before Shabbos, is a big inyan, not a halacha, but many tzaddikim, and especially the Hasidic Rebbes and Gedolim would always try to take a nap erev Shabbos. That was like a big avodah for them, the big way to prepare for Shabbos. They would have energy. Okay, listen, that's a practical idea. I doubt most people can do that, especially a wife or mother of a household. If you could do it, you could you could scatter your chores, and you could squeeze in a little bit of a rest. That should only be helpful. But again, I wouldn't, I don't have any good answer of how not to be that exhausted. But I would say, like I said before, accept it, don't fight it, but take something that you can do even within that. Let's say you had one thought, maybe any time during the week. We talk about counting each day for Shabbos, but sometime before you're that exhausted and before Friday, erev Shabbos, when you're that busy, but one thought that you could keep putting in your mind, prepare for Shabbos. And it could be a simple halacha, and that's like you discussed Torah this week. So keep thinking about it. And then even as you sit down and maybe your eyes are closing and you can't even do much because you're exhausted, think about that. I thought about Torah this week. I learned to know halacha this week. Or, open up some sefer about Shabbos. There's something, find some shir written somewhere. Find 2 lines of it. Something about Shabbos, that you can think about. Think about the student. Think about kiddos. Think about the davening. Open up the siddur and, and look at one line of the davening. That's, very unique. And just think and focus on that. A word, a thought, anything. And then even in your exhaustion, and even with your eyes closing as you're sitting down on the couch after you lit nearest, that could be in your mind. So prepare with one thing, one thought. Again, it could be a word, it could be a halacha, something on Shabbos ahead of time, and that'll be sort of your table of derech, your food for the journey. So even when you're on a journey and, you can't do much, have that in your mind that's ahead of time, something deep that you can still focus on, even if you are too exhausted to actually do anything.
Right. I know that there's a lot of people who struggle in terms of chinuch with their children, where the kids don't like Shabbos.
Right.
And I mean, I have theories about why that might be. I don't know for sure. I know,
right.
Like in my family, we play a lot of games and we spend a lot of time together and we rest and we hang out with friends in the neighborhood. So I think that definitely contributes to my children. I haven't heard any complaints from them yet about Shabbos.
Right, I would imagine they're not complaining. If that's what you're doing, that's wonderful. They're probably not complaining that much.
Baruch Hashem. But for the families that have you heard, as a Rebbe of a shul, as a Rebbe, as a teacher, have you heard of people who struggle with Shabbos as a result of the way that they were taught by their parents, or like what could possibly be something that could hurt our chinuch with our children in terms of like giving them a good feeling towards Shabbos?
Right. Yeah. I definitely hear it. You never can scientifically pin one, cast or way of being on another. There's somebody could just have some negative connotation. It doesn't mean a parent did something wrong. It could be a natural mindset, a natural personality. Again, we always, in general, what keeps kids connected and growing spiritually. There's always theories. You could try to find connections. We never know for sure. So I would never claim to know exactly what will and what won't. And just because somebody has a child struggling with Shabbos doesn't mean they're wrong. But like anything, we try to see what helps. What works, like you said, first of all, general positivity in just the experience. Again, time together. The way that the negative sides of Shabbos are presented, because we know positivity creates positive connection, but we can't ignore the fact that there's a lot we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. There's Zachor and Shamar, which is the positive remembering, the Shamar, the staying away from all the malachas, but we can't ignore that. We're not going to act like Shabbos is only a nice Suda, a nice Shemiros, and nice games, and not, this is not allowed to do. But dealing with that properly in the right context is also important. It's not just a negative. You're not allowed to do that. Don't do that. It's not a control. It's not a negativity. It's not an overreaction. So, of course, very much accentuate the positive, but that's even more important is how to put the negative, I don't mean that in a bad way, but the things they're not allowed to do in the right context. We don't do that on Shabbos. And it's special we don't do that on Shabbos. So I'm not ignoring the things we can't do, but say it not in an overreaction and not in anything, harsh. And not anything negative. Say, this is what keeps Shabbos special. We don't do this, and we don't distract ourselves with the cooking and writing and talking on phones, and we can't do it. We have to face that, but don't let that become too harsh and negative. Let that also be part of the positive aspects. Like the general experience, like you said, just good family time, games, talking, even positive feeling at the table, stories, and, positive experience in general. Certainly appreciating how, the mitzvahs of Shabbos make it special, like the Sudas and Miros and all kinds of things we do. And even let the restriction be things that are put in a good light. And, let them see that. And, anytime you talk about a restriction, let them see, but look what Shabbos is. Look how special Shabbos is. Look how it keeps us focused. Look how it keeps us positive.
I don't know if this thought of mine, this is totally my opinion. My views that are expressed are not necessarily the Rav's views or anybody else's, not my children, not my husband. I speak for myself. But that being said, I always got very upset when I would see parents yelling at their underage children about Shabbos. It's Shabbos. Right. What are you doing? It's Muktzah. What are you doing? And freaking out. And I said, your kid might not even know what Shabbos is, but you're yelling at them for Shabbos. Anytime you mention Shabbos, you're now going to associate yelling at your kid for Shabbos.
100%, right?
What do you think is going to happen?
Younger. I mean, it's going to be for anybody, right?
Right.
It's going to be for anybody, and it's something to be careful about. 100%. That association, again, it could be firm, it could be exact, but it cannot be yelling. I mean, it's a natural human reaction, and nobody's perfect, but absolutely right. It should never be something in a negative way. It's strong, they're not allowed to do it, but never in a way that is negative, is bad, is putting you down, is, again, when people yell, most people wouldn't decide that they're supposed to. They're probably overreacting, and it'd be very important to focus on that and to control oneself and say it. It could be firm, it could be real, but it's not in a putting you down or yelling, controlling type of way. That's a real long-term association with Shabbos.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And then I guess my second to final question, which is now that we sort of, I think I have a really nice view of ways to prepare for Shabbos, what I can gain from it, what are the, I have some nice things about, why it's important for me to keep it in mind, why it's important for me to keep it fresh. But what I want to know is how can I take that Kedusha and that connection into my week? What would be a practical, way of bringing that holiness into the rest of my week so that I could tap into Shabbos, for more than just Shabbos. I want it all. I want my cake and I want to eat it too. I want it all.
Right, exactly right. And it's true, by the way, Shabbos does have that very special power. It's both the end of the week. It is Yom HaShvi. It's the seventh day. That's Hashem created the world. It's really the end and the completion of the greatness of creation of the last week. But it also gives power and spirituality to the next week. It's like both. Like view Shabbos is the center of both weeks. There's a lot of things we say about in L'chadodi, Ki Makar HaBracha. It's the source of all goodness that comes to the next week. Many people have like a minhag if they have a yard site coming up the next week, besides for the day of the week on Shabbos. And sure, the man will daven for the Yama to get an Aliyah because that Shabbos gives power into the next week. There's a lot of things in halacha that show that. In fact, I just messaged recently, I found recently in Shul that Hashem really created the world with only the ability to last 6 days. And if we wouldn't have had a Shabbos, we wouldn't have any potential or power to go further. And we say that in Mir, it's an interesting word we say. In Menucha V'Simcha, we say, Ki Lishisha Kol Durim V'Omdim. I just saw I give a shir in Shul about the Demiras to learn. We've learned the Demiras, which are very powerful. By the way, if you do want to prepare or learn about Shabbos, take some of the Demiras and learn the word and look at a translation and look at an explanation. It's very overwhelming, very fascinating. I started doing that a little bit in Shul certain weeks. And Ki Li Shisha Kol Durim V'Omdim. Not that Hashem created Bit Shisha, not that Hashem created 4 during 6 days, but only the last for 6 days. And Shabbos, only Shabbos gives the power for the next 6 days. So we are getting spiritual powers into the next week. And if we're aware of that, it'll be very powerful. Practically, I guess that would, it's hard to say how to practically bring things to Shabbos, but the same ways that we're discussing how to prepare for it, let's keep that in our minds as we leave Shabbos. Let's not just leave Shabbos with a sigh of release. Again, we can accept our physical selves, but let's leave Shabbos with the thought of something that I gained over Shabbos, even if it's what I prepared myself with, that halacha, that hashkafa, that word, that line of tefillah, something that happened over the Shabbos, a story we heard about. Let me keep it with me. Let me remind myself on Matzai Shabbos. The way you treat Matzai Shabbos may be a good way to continue, whether it's you keep on some of your clothing on Shabbos. There's different discussions on how much you should or have to, but, if you, at least for a while, some people change right away or not, but maybe keep something on that Shabbos that could remind you how you have a Malava Malka. It means we're continuing Shabbos into the week. So people leave candles lit, Motzei Shabbos. Again, whether it's your minhag, your heskell or not, it might be something you can do to say, look, I'm reminding myself that Shabbos extends and gives power into the week. So you can definitely do things like that. And again, remind yourself, again, it could be something happened, a nice story, even a game you played with your family, talk about it, remember it. If you thought about something over Shabbos, or even the thing you prepared for Shabbos with, keep it in your mind as you're going into the next week, and really bring those things with you and realize that, even the minute Shabbos is over, as soon as Abdullah is over, by some people sing certain the mirror after Abdullah. Again, even if it's not your minute, even do it all the time. Maybe do something to show, what Shabbos ended. We're not just, But that's just breathing a sigh of relief. I always have a funny story. Sometimes kids are unknowingly revealing in public of what goes on in their homes. So I was once at a family semicha, and there were a lot of people there, and Shabbos was over, and everybody was crowded from all different sides of the family. There were this side and that side. Everybody was crowded into this living room, dining room. One person was making Havdalah, and quiet room, the minute the person finished the last bracha and everybody said amen, one little kid said, "Can we turn on the radio now?" What? Everybody burst out laughing. I felt so bad for that. It was embarrassing. And it's almost like, now everybody has to see what's the first thing this person thinks of after topic. Can we turn on the radio now? And again, it's not a bad thing, fine. That's what he likes to do. It was just funny, you feel like, what's that first moment Shabbos is over? Where does your mind go to, So even if it's the minute you finish Havdalah, you say Yeshivas Mir, or you just say to your family, thank you for a great Shabbos. Let's keep this with us. Or you focus yourself, whether it's in action, whether it's in clothing, whether it's in the Suda or a candle, something to do to keep it going. Again, obviously it's hard to, keep Shabbos generally, but keep that mindset.
Right. Is there anything are there any points, or are there any advice or anything that you wanted to bring up that that we didn't get to cover, because there's so much we didn't get to cover? But is there anything that you'd like to end off with, someone was to take away from the podcast, one particular piece or something that we
I just summarize, putting everything together from the most physical to the most spiritual. That's how we're built. That's how our week is built. That's how Shabbos is built. And recognize, tap into our physical selves, but allow it not to stop there. and realize that our deepest part of our neshama is attached to our most base part of our bodies. And remember that that was the Rashat. Remember Shabbos really build and speak to every part of ourselves. You can enjoy the food, you can focus on the davening or on Zmiras, and you could get to the point where you're Me'elam Haba all at the same time. And just accept, recognize, and build every part from the most physical to the most spiritual.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been so interesting. I really appreciate the flow of this conversation. It's been really insightful.
Thank you. Happy to do more. There's always more to talk about, and I appreciate all your good work.
Thank you.
Views expressed by me, your host, and my delightful guest are not necessarily reflective of each other's views, ideas, or life choices. Sometimes we're on the same page, and other times we're not.